For the past 3 years, the WWE has been referring to John Cena or Roman Reigns as the greatest of all time. Now, the greatest of all time is a question that can never really be answered. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. Who was the most popular? Who had the most accomplishments? Or who was the best wrestler? In this video, I am just going to talk about why I truly believe that Shawn Michaels is actually the greatest of all time. If you were to make a list of the top 10 wrestling matches of all time, I guarantee at least 3 of the matches on that list would be Shawn Michaels matches. He is known as Mr. WrestleMania, putting on amazing matches with the likes of The Undertaker not once but twice at WrestleMania 25 and 26. He put on a masterpiece with Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21 and also with Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12. That match is quite controversial because it was a 1-hour Iron Man match, but for me it just shows how impressive Shawn Michaels was. To be able to put a match like that on for 1 hour in the main event of WrestleMania is an impressive feat. Even though his partner during that match was Bret Hart, it's still an amazing accomplishment and just goes to show how great he is. We have to also remember that during the 90s, Shawn Michaels was kind of a prick. He was on drugs most of the time, he was just getting into so much trouble, yet he would still put on incredible matches, and he ended up losing 4 years of his career due to injury and just having to deal with his demons, only to return triumphantly in 2002 and go on an insane run, which only resulted in 1 world championship. But to be fair, he was offered to win the championship multiple times, but he didn't want to. He just was more there for his passion for wrestling and wanting to put over the younger talent, which he did do at WrestleMania 23 with John Cena, which was a great main event match. But yeah, as I said, when it comes to match quality, I truly believe there's no one better than Shawn Michaels. You could make the argument for Bret Hart or Kurt Angle, but I think Shawn Michaels just edges the both of them out, and this is an argument towards him being considered the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Also want to mention the switch in music, which is in my opinion to this day the greatest finisher of all time. I know it's overused nowadays as the super kick, but when Shawn Michaels did it, it just hit different. His tuning up the band, the way he used to execute it. I know some people will make the argument for a move like the RKO or the Stunner, but for me the Shawn Michaels switch in music remains above all finishes as the greatest finisher of all time, and for me that's another reason that he is the greatest of all time. I know a lot of people wouldn't consider it the best finisher because it was quite simple and just a kick to the chin, but a lot of people love that finishing maneuver, and I think Shawn Michaels was the reason for that, the way he would execute it and make it look realistic, and the sound it would make. Just easily my favourite finisher of all time, and in my opinion the greatest finisher of all time. We also need to talk about the fact that Shawn Michaels was great as a solo competitor. As a face or a heel, he could play both roles really well, but he was also a good part of a faction, D-Generation X, which is arguably the greatest faction in WWE history. They were very, very integral to the Attitude Era, and seeing Shawn Michaels and Triple H just have their own fun with China was just hilarious, and it just goes to show that Shawn Michaels wasn't just a babyface or a good heel. He could also be a comedian with his role in D-Generation X, so I think that's another reason we have to consider him as the greatest of all time, because he was able to be part of a tag team and then also just go on a solo run and have the greatest rivalries by himself, and him and Triple H's chemistry together was just undeniable and such a memorable part of the Attitude Era. Another thing to consider is that WWE does refer to, as I said before, Roman Reigns and John Cena as the greatest of all time, but we have to remember that John Cena during his career used to be booed quite a lot, because let's be honest, we were all sick of Super Cena. He used to beat everyone, he used to kick out of everything, and now I think that John Cena's got part-time, we kind of respect him more and like him more, but we can't forget those times that he used to be very, very frustrating to watch. The same with Roman Reigns. After Roman Reigns left the Shield, he was heavily booed and no one really liked him. The fans just completely rejected him, and then obviously he did become the tribal chief, which reinvigorated his character and made him an incredibly great champion and incredibly great wrestler. But for me, they had periods, both these characters of John Cena and Roman Reigns, where they were really disliked by the fans, and I don't think the same can be said for Shawn Michaels. I don't think there was a period in Shawn Michaels' career where the fans were sick of him. Not only that, but I also want to talk about Shawn Michaels' retirement match. Yes, I know he technically did have another match in a tag team between DX and Brothers of Destruction, but we like to pretend that match never happened, as should all of you, because that match was just not something we like to remember, or even Shawn Michaels himself likes to remember. But if we go back to his actual retirement at WrestleMania 26 in the main event against the legendary The Undertaker, what an incredible match, what a way to go out. Shawn Michaels, I believe, was in his mid-40s when he did retire, And I just have so much respect for the fact that he actually hung up his boots, because many people, I feel like, will just go over the top and just refuse to retire and carry on. This example nowadays can be used with Edge and Chris Jericho, who are absolute legends in wrestling. Edge is a Hall of Famer and Chris Jericho will be a Hall of Famer. But for me, they cannot be the greatest of all time, and they cannot retire, they cannot let it go, and they need to realize that, now's a good time to retire. A few years ago would have been a good day to retire. But Shawn Michaels understood that, and he retired on top. He retired in the main event of WrestleMania in an incredible match that will be remembered forever, and that's another reason we have to consider him as the GOAT. I also want to talk about his rivalry with Bret Hart, which to this day I believe is the greatest rivalry in wrestling history. A lot of people love the Austin-McMahon rivalry, as well as Austin versus The Rock, and those are incredible rivalries, don't get me wrong, but for me the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels rivalry will always be the greatest because it was real. Those two absolutely despised each other, and they faced off in the main event of WrestleMania. The Montreal Screwjob, how can anyone forget that incredible moment in wrestling history? But yeah, I think that rivalry stands above all others because it was real, and it was between two of the greatest wrestlers, in-ring wrestlers of all time, in my opinion. And I think that's another reason that Shawn Michaels is the GOAT. And seeing him and Bret Hart make up in 2010 and put aside their differences, and now they're quite good friends, it's just such an emotional roller coaster, an incredible rivalry, and I think one that will stand the test of time. I do also want to talk about popularity, because I think this is the one thing going against Shawn Michaels, because let's be real here, he wasn't as big as a Hulk Hogan or a Stone Cold Steve Austin or a John Cena in terms of popularity. Now I understand that, and you can use that knock against him to say he isn't the GOAT, but I think this is the only thing he really lacks. And let's be honest, no wrestler is perfect. Hulk Hogan was the biggest wrestler of all time in terms of popularity, but his matches weren't exactly amazing. So you can't really knock Shawn Michaels for not having popularity, because I don't believe that there is a wrestler who has everything. Every wrestler has a thing that they aren't as good at as other things, but for me Shawn Michaels is the most consistent and the best in all departments compared to the others, and that's why, like I said, I consider him the GOAT. Those were kind of my reasons for why I think he's the greatest of all time, and as I said, this video isn't going to answer the question and put the discussion to bed. People will always discuss who is the greatest of all time, but I think when it comes to Mount Rushmore, you cannot leave Shawn Michaels off. I mean, he's even training the youngsters at NXT to be the next future of the WWE. The man was just crazy talented and an absolute legend. I do wish we got to see him face AJ Styles in a retirement match a few years ago. I think people are still talking about that now, but I believe it's very, very much too late. But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button and let me know if you have any other videos, ideas you want me to go through and talk about. But yeah, thank you for watching. Have a good one.